Hello. Firstly, I want to kick off this panel by thanking She Loves Tech, who have sponsored the panel. They're like the world's largest accelerator for women and tech, and they focus on empowering entrepreneurs through education, mentorship, and building networks. And that's obviously really super relevant to today's panel. We're going to be meeting 3 very successful women who've used technology and strong networks to build some very different and very innovative music businesses across Asia. So my name is Coleman. I'm a musician. I've worked in the music industry for a while. I was also a radio host on an Australian network called Triple J. And currently I'm working on a new music project, which is an animated science fiction band called Big Sound that uses Unreal Engine and motion capture to bring the characters to life. So I'm obviously very interested in tech and like the future of the music industry, and I can't wait to get into that with you guys. So we only have half an hour, which is not a lot of time to get into some really interesting different things that you're all working on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to each of you, I'm going to do some quick fire questions, and then I'm going to open it up to the floor. So if you've got questions in mind, hold them there. We'll try and get to them at the end. But Priya, let's start with you. So you are the founder and the CEO of Gig Life Pro, which is a platform that brings together music industry from across Asia Pacific to sort of share knowledge and network and help each other grow. Let's start with a bit of an origin story from you. What made you want to launch the platform?
So Gig Life Pro is basically the culmination of my career thus far. So I've had the opportunity in my career to work in the US at venues, at radio stations and PR companies, at label, and then I moved back to Singapore and started my booking agency, and then eventually ended up working with The Orchard, where I was, until recently, the VP of International Marketing for Asia Pacific. So I have a really unique background that covers different music markets, but also different areas of the industry. And 2 things really kind of stuck out to me in this process. One is that the industry is actually very siloed. Different areas of the industry don't communicate with each other in a way that I think they could to bring more opportunities. The other thing was, if you give anybody from anywhere information about how a certain market works and connect them to the right people on the ground, whether they are creative collaborators or service providers, industry, what have you, they are far more likely to succeed. So whether that was with, at The Orchard with BTS or DPR, trying to get them out of Asia, or whether that was artists like Max, or recently Simple Plan, trying to build their audience within Asia, same rule applies. Give them all the information they need about how that market works, and then you connect them with people who can help them along the way. So yeah, that's the idea behind Gig Life Pro.
Yeah, I feel like the words connect and community, a lot of people use them as buzzwords, but at the end of the day, you've got to actually do something to connect people. So how did you guys start out trying to actually link people with different experiences in different markets?
Yeah, absolutely. So it started off really with a lot of my former peers, my current peers, those who are based in Europe or the US, asking me for advice on how to break into this market. Where do I begin? Who do I work with? And they were all asking me the same thing. How do you reach your audience? And also, who do I work with is the big one, right? Initially, because I'm a people person, pre-COVID, we started hosting a lot of industry events, like casual networking events that you would see very often in the US, even in Australia. They're really great about getting the industry together in a very informal manner. That doesn't exist as much in this part of the world, and I think it's really needed, because as we know, these are the kind of events where we can meet people from different backgrounds who might be able to help us with whatever we're trying to accomplish. During COVID, we've always thought about doing a platform, but during COVID, it became a necessity, right? How else are we going to continue to network? How are we going to continue to learn about new markets? Which is where we kind of hustled to launch our platform. We have over 300 members on the platform now, and growing rapidly. We had over 40 sign up this month. And also hosted over 300 virtual happy hours since COVID. We've done 20 Real Talk webinars online and 1 offline, and just hosted our 3rd in-person event last Sunday in Singapore.
So you've gone from live to a platform.
Yes.
Anything coming out we should know about?
Actually, yes, we're working on MUCON conference. I'm not sure if I can plug another conference here, though. Talk to me later if you want to hear more about that in Korea later this year.
No, it's super exciting. And I do want to come back at the end, sort of talk about, like big takeaways for moving across markets and into new territories, which I think Gig Life Pro is really helping with. If you haven't signed up, sign up to Gig Life Pro. There's a free membership.
There is. There's 3 tiers, actually. There's a free tier. Then there's also... So like I mentioned, it started off for the professionals, which are people who I worked with in my career who are now senior management, over 6 years experience, really trying to get a more strategic idea or strategic advice about how to approach these markets and find people to work with on the ground. And then as I started building it, I realized actually I need to make content for their teams. Who's actually the one that's going to call the PR agency and coordinate with them? It's not the person that is talking to me right now. It's their marketing manager or their product manager, or what have you. So we started building out content for that premium tier. And then as we started doing that more and talking to more people, we realized actually artists now really need to have this sort of information because they have access to distribution, content creation, but they don't know about this entire world of resources and people that do so many other things in the music industry that can help them.
Yeah. Esther, I feel like platforms is going to speak to you a lot in terms of what you're doing with Pops Worldwide. So you're the founder and CEO of Pops, which is a hugely successful streaming entertainment platform. You've got like 4.5 billion views per month of all of the stuff that you've got going on there. And one of the things that sets Pops Worldwide apart from maybe other content platforms is that you've got this network of over like 3,000 creative partners, so people who make cool things, and you work with them, and that's particularly relevant for the music industry. So what sort of work are you doing with musicians with Pops Worldwide?
So music has always been part of Pops' DNA. I mean, actually, I started Pops because I first came to a Music Matters back in Hong Kong, with Jasper a long time ago, 14 years ago. So, music has always been in our DNA, and then from music we expanded into entertainment, into kids, anime, comics, esports. And so across all these verticals, what we found is that we've been able to cross-promote or mix the different genres of content with one another to build communities, to leverage each community. So for example, we have a very big artist in V-pop artist in Vietnam. And we have an amazing team of comic artists. And so what we did is we bridged the two. We created a whole series, a comic series based on this artist, just so it could tap in and have a more personal relationship with a new, different kind of community, to elevate, be more engaging, to have a life outside of just being an artist, right? So that's something that we like to do, which is, how do we bridge the artists into different types of genre, help them distribute across the different platforms, monetize, and just grow their network, grow their communities.
It's interesting because I feel like, for example, today I was watching the anime panel, and there are really great opportunities for like music artists to work with anime artists, for example, but it's often brands that have the funding to bring them together. Whereas I feel like what you guys are doing is creating a more organic way to bring these different kind of content creators together. Do you have an editorial role in that matchmaking process, or is it pretty organic? Like, how does it happen?
We try not to have an editorial role because, artists themselves are also, they're creative people, and then comic artists themselves are also creative. And so we just try to facilitate the two between. Get them to be all on the same page and to leverage each other's communities in terms of whether it be to monetize events, promotion, all of that stuff. So, that's our role, is just to bring everyone in together and to elevate both communities.
Yeah, I think, Tia, this kind of like network effect of like using communities of fans and sharing those communities between artists and different disciplines, that's super important to your line of work as well. You've got a very long resume as well, like everyone on this panel, but I really want to focus on talking about Hot Panda Media, which is a talent and booking agency based in Vietnam. how do you work with artists to build their careers?
There's one thing I have to say, it's Hot Panda comes very naturally because before Hot Panda, we have BitVN, which is an online platform, and we have 30 million active users on all of our channels. So we have the online platforms, and aside from that, I work with multiple venue outlets, nightclubs in Vietnam. So it's very natural for us to have the request to book, international artists, and we have the artists of ourselves. So, it's a bridge that builds both ways. So we have Dewan, which is our partner in Hot Panda Media, and he's take care of the local artists. And I will try to bring the international artists over, and then we will try to bring our local artists outside Vietnam by collabing with labels, collabing with artists, and collabing with events like festivals, bringing our artists to perform in other countries.
So you were talking to me a little bit before about like club culture in Vietnam and how that's still a really important tastemaker scene, I guess. How do you get artists from outside of Vietnam involved in that club network?
Well, the thing is, we talk a lot about, how other international artists can go and penetrate into new music markets. And I have talked to them a lot. And I think the conversation has been around for a while about how artists can localize their content and be more, connected to their fans in the local markets. And we've talked about, how we can decide what taste, what kind of music we want to bring into the scenes, because, we are actually, I think that we're part of the picture, and we're the ones who get to decide, what we bring into the market. And we have to, during COVID, everything changed. We lose the understanding of what the audience want, what they listen to, what music they listen to. And I think artists have the same problems. And so we did a test. We turned one of the venues into an event venues, and we do not host an event anymore, but we let the communities people, bring their communities inside and host their events. And so we have this understanding of what each communities are listening to, and we understand, music, what genre, and how we would work with the community to understand what taste, what music we should bring in.
Right, so in terms of finding artists that might match who are from outside the market, you first got to actually listen to what people want to hear, right? Like you can't force people to listen to something they're just not interested in. And I know DJs are obviously a really important part of being tastemakers in communities because they're playing music for their friends. How do you work with DJs to sort of get new music to them or, get them in front of new audiences?
We do a lot of workshops. I think workshops, discussions, conferences, very, very important. And, just 5-6 years ago, many Vietnamese people do not know about this thing that's called music industry and what, elements they are, who are labels, who are managers, who are distributions, and we just don't know who to work with and what to do. And I think that after I've attended this Wired Music conference with John, I think that it's very important that we bring this knowledge into Vietnam and try to somehow educate people. And I think, ever since I've seen a lot of people being aware of what they're doing and aware of who they should, contact and how they should work, what kind of thing they would ask for in contracts with labels, with managements, etc. I think it's very important to have these workshops.
Yeah, workshopping seems like a really great way to just upskill artists really quickly and then let them form their own networks. It's rather than forcing it.
Yes.
Onto
And networking is definitely important. I've been so inspired by women like Priya, like Dita, Ayudita from Ismaya, Reina from Japan. I think they have bring this great, networking opportunities for people to understand about what they're doing and what they can do.
So I want to hit you each with some really quick fire questions now, short, snappy answers. A lot of people are obviously here today and at the conference for the week because they're trying to find new markets and new audiences. So possibly really successful at home with a local market and then trying to find people who might be interested in that somewhere else. So I want each of you to imagine that you're talking to an artist or a manager or a label who's trying to find an audience in another APAC country. What advice would you give them? Priya, maybe we'll start with you.
Happens to me all the time, and that's easy. Join Gig Life Pro, because there's a lot of information on there. But in general, it's really just whatever market you want to go into, you have to understand how that market works, right? From there, you have to figure out who's doing what, right? If you're an electronic DJ and you want to go like playing house techno, figure out which the house techno promoters are in that market, right? So just be very strategic, because there are a lot of elements of the music industry. There's a lot of us out there. We all do very, very different things. So the more you understand who does what in general, but also in each market, the more likely you are to find the right people who are going to get you opportunities that are relevant to you.
Esther, what would you say?
For me, I think it's definitely that, but also to take it one step further is, to find collaborations, to find micro communities. Because, in especially Southeast Asia, it's, one region, but many different markets, different languages. So if you can find similar artists or someone in the same genre and do something together and tap into their community, their fans, and then vice versa, then it builds up, both artists. I think that's a great start. And then to keep doing it across the region or within one country, whatever the goal may be.
Tia, what's your hot tip?
I agree with both of you. Again, I said localize your content, not just your, try to find remixes, try to contact the local promoters, the local artists, and see what you can do and how you can, understand the communities that you are interested in. And that's very, very important, because you cannot just go to one promoter and say, hey, this is my music, book me, and do something. That's not going to happen.
You mentioned remixes there. I want to go back to that. What should, if you are a DJ or a producer, what sort of music would you be remixing if you're looking at going to a new territory?
I have to say, I have some example that works really well. We have Alfie Wukong, who is a producer and artist from Singapore, and he went into Vietnam, and he listened to some of this very famous TikTok songs, or trendy songs, and then he started to do remixes. And during his set, he plays those songs, and the people went crazy, and it really, really makes people love him so much, and that's one of the example. The other one is that you get the people who the DJs or the producers to remix one of your, tracks that you really like. And by that, when you go and you perform in a club or at your shows in Vietnam, and you have that person on stage with you saying that we have done this together, and I think that will touch the audience very much.
It's like showing that you see and you connect and you value that culture. And
I think that's a much more fun way of, collabing, and going into different markets, express yourself and sharing it with people.
All right, next question. Personally, what are the biggest challenges for you and your business at the moment? Maybe Tia, we'll start with you and go back the other way. Yeah,
my
biggest challenge.
I think that since COVID has ended, we have opened our markets and start to book more DJs, but we have this huge difficulties with policies about, the government or the bank. They do not understand how it works, and it's a problem for us to have this contract signed and people sent overseas. This is a policy problem.
Policy issues. Don't envy you. Esther, what about you? Challenges?
I think for us, we're working a lot with the young artists, and I think for them to continuously create content, there is a lack of resources, financing to put back into their work. And so for us, we're looking at, okay, if it's microfinancing to help you with your next audio, with your next single, your next music video, your next event. So those are the things that I think that is missing in the market, is the financing to help these young artists, these new artists grow in their markets and across the region.
Yeah, it's tough. Priya?
Actually, Esther kind of touched on an issue that is our kind of biggest concern, is the localization element, right? That we want to make our content available for as many independent artists as possible. So we're now trying to figure out how to do that by localizing it in all the various languages that are across the region.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing is like, it's a global database, but you still have to be speaking to people, not just the language, like English or otherwise that they understand, but also like the way they consume information and making sure that's coming to them appropriately, whether it's like a workshop or an app or whatever you're looking at. On the flip side, opportunities. Priya, what are some big opportunities that are coming up for you at Gig Life Pro?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest opportunity is just how globalized the world is, right? How connected we all are, how much easier it is for us to communicate with somebody halfway around the world when we can't afford to physically go there and explore a market. There's so much information available for us for free and people that we can connect to for free. And yeah, I think that's definitely the biggest opportunity I see.
What about you, Esther?
I think what we saw because of COVID that there's a lot more online collaboration between artists around the region. Each country is much more open in terms of welcoming new artists outside of home country. For example, we did an online live stream with DJ Dessa in Indonesia, with one of our DJs here in Vietnam, and that was amazing because we saw a 50% lift in terms of engagement and reach. So I think the collaboration between the different artists and creators across the region is definitely an opportunity. And now how do we monetize that and further monetize that?
Yeah, what about you, Tia? Have you got some big opportunities that you can see?
I think there's so much opportunities for every people working in every positions. The artists have the opportunities to collab, to perform outside of Vietnam, to be listened to. The club, you know, the people who go to club, they get more opportunities in terms of listening to new music and approaching, you know, new party cultures. And promoters like me, I have so much opportunities just working with different people, different organizations, and it's, you know, it's wonderful.
So I want to ask like one last question, and then I'm going to throw it open. So if anyone's got some things they want to ask, keep that in mind. But we haven't talked about the fact here that everyone here is a female founder, which is awesome. So on that note, and with big thanks to She Loves Tech, what's one thing that you think everyone in this room can do to make sure that we see plenty more women having successful long-term careers in the music industry, especially in this region? Tia, what about you?
Well, I think that, you know, like I work with a lot of female founders or female co-worker colleagues in the industry, and it's just wonderful. It's not about business, you know. We share life together, life stories. We're actually very good friends, and I find them so inspiring, and I feel like it's just natural, and I appreciate the opportunities of different organizations to put women, you know, on the stage like this and share our story. And somehow people have found us, and they have said that, you know, our stories are so inspiring. And so I think we're going good. We're doing good.
So like opportunity to do that like storytelling and connection and like, you know, reach audiences in an industry sense. Like this is the audience, you know, that sort of networking opportunities. Yeah, what about you, Esther?
I think that there are a lot of female executives or female in the music or entertainment industry compared to a lot of other industries. But we can always do better by bringing them up and bringing them up to the executive level so that they are at the table, they're helping making decisions, setting policies, setting decisions, participating. So, you know, building them up to the executive level is very important.
And Priya?
I would say as an industry on the whole, we could include us more, you know, include us on more panels and recognize our accomplishments more on industry lists and not just women's lists or women's panels. As great and as much as we love doing this as well, it would also be nice to be featured on general panels of our area of expertise and recognized on whatever industry recognition areas there are as well.
And we should aim so that there's a conference where there isn't just a special panel for women.
It's like not necessary anymore. Yes. You don't have to have it. Like, why would you have that? So we're going to take maybe 1 to 2 questions. If anyone has anything they'd like to ask any of the panelists, stick your hand up. We'll send a microphone over.
I was interested to see what the scene in Vietnam is like. Can you just give us an update? Like, what is there concerts? Is there clubs? Like, what's happening there?
Tia, maybe that's for you first, and then.
Oh yeah, sorry. Was the gig life?
For T, I was just what the scene's like in Vietnam at the moment, because everyone tells me it's exploding and stuff. And so, what's it like on the ground?
Well, we have a lot of clubs going on. I myself, we're running 11 clubs and 8 to come towards the beginning of next year. So the club scenes are just blooming. The festival scene's also blooming. We have, I think, 7 or 8 festivals from now until the end of the year. A lot of opportunities for artists, regional, local, and international, to come to Vietnam, and we can bring artists outside, overseas, or to foreign countries to perform as well.
And is this down south in Saigon, or are you up north?
I think that the Saigon scene is more developed in a way because people are more open to ways to parties, but the people from Hanoi, they have more unique tastes in music. So that's why working in both cities, we have to have different decisions in what music and what artists we bring in.
On that, I just want to follow up and say, do these live performances play a big part in music discovery, or are you mostly seeing that audiences want to hear songs that they're already familiar with?
I think we are trying to change that. Like before, when I book artists, I try to bring the artists that people know, the familiar sounds, so that they feel more engaged when they go into a concert or to a show. But recently, we have looked into local, regional artists, and before we bring the artists on stage, we try to promote them on our platforms and get their song or sounds being a bit more familiar, and we try to tell their stories instead of just tell people to listen to their music. They don't do that anymore.
Love it. Any final questions before we wrap up and have a coffee break? No. Well, I want to say big thanks to all our... Oh, we've got one over here, sorry.
Hi there. I'm based out of Laos, and so we see a big culture bubble of influence in that region where it's dominated by Thailand, South Korea, and basically the USA. How do you see breaking through that ceiling or that barrier of getting the local music, like in my case, Lao music, to get where it can be on that same playing field as superpowers like Blackpink would be a great example, because they've actually done it where they've taken some of the different cultures, brought in different language elements to their music. Is that the road forward, or what do you see? I don't know which panelist I'd address on this one, but
I'd be curious to hear from Esther on this.
Yeah. I would really start with the local market, local communities, building that up, doing a lot of events, online events, offline events, really sparking maybe a movement just for the love of Lao music, right? And having that pride for that music, and not be just listening to outside content. Once you can get from 70% of the market is listening to local music, you've got it, and then you start then taking it outside of market. But if you can just create that movement and that community and that pride of Lao music, and it could be localizing international content in the local language, right? I mean, that could be a big start.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much again to all of our panelists, to She Love Tech, to Music Matters. Come say hey to anyone that you want to meet. We're all going to go out and have a coffee.